Okay. Yeah. So like I mentioned, I want to record today and our sessions for two things. Probably not going to use it for like advertising or anything like that, but possibly maybe one day like for the actual course, but like also for us to like go back and be like, okay, now I remember. So it's all documented instead of taking notes and all that. So I found some really cool free stuff on the internet. Have you ever seen, so this is the TOEFL Test Ready. So it's actually the site from the um, actual TOEFL, like the TOEFL, um, the people who made the test. So they have all these free things. Of course, there's extra stuff that you can buy, but we don't need to do that because we don't need that. Of course, they also have like want to prepare, but you got that. So right here is where we're going to do the free full practice test, and that way I can kind of track where you're at. And then after that, we'll do like a quick, like little study plan together. All right, so let's start with the reading. I know, for me, yeah, like let's get this over with because I'm like,
The
God,
answer is not the reading
yeah,
because I can understand like perfectly, but it's the question. The question is like, makes no
yes,
sense.
exactly. That's exactly how I feel. It's the same. I like fourth grade work. I'm telling you, like my son's fourth grade reading, I get those wrong all the time. I passed the fourth grade. I passed it. I know I did. But when I read those questions, I understand what the reading is, but the question I'm like, oh, I know what this is. And then he'll agree with me or he'll argue with me. He's like, no, I think it's this. And then I'll be like, no, it's definitely this. And he'll be right. All right. So can you see this here? All right. Go ahead and read this for me. Foresightedness. So like think of this part right here, foresight, right? And then foresightedness, right? Foresight is like the uh what you predict in the future. Foresight. Very good. Your pronunciation is excellent too, by the way. Like I was very impressed by some of the big words that you were able to say there. All right. All right. So typically, so this one we're going to do like that where we read it and then look at the questions. But what I usually do with my son is we'll read the questions first, kind of like what we do with the listening in class. Like I'll read the questions and that way you're prepared. You kind of know what to look for when you're reading it. In paragraph 1, each of the following is mentioned as a feature of the city of Tio. I'm not going to say that one either. I don't know how to say T-T-T-U. I don't know. Between AD 150 and 700, except, so like when they have these questions, right? I hate that because I'll read right past that one and then I'll be like, oh, I saw this in there. Right? That's to trick you. So when they have those caps, make sure that you like notice it, and on the test. You do see apartment complexes right there, right? So, yep, we got that. So we know it's not that one because it's except, right? Many manufacturing workshops or any of these others. Let's see. A large number of industrial workshops. Yeah, so basically, so they're going to try to trick you with that. They'll say, oh, it doesn't say manufacturing, it says industrial. Same thing, right? Administrative center, an administrative center, right? Just one, not several. and a regular grid pattern of streets and buildings. So that looks like that answers. So which one do you think it is?
Okay. So I think it's the second one because it's the same.
Exactly. So that's how tricky this test is going to be. It's going to be very weird. I hate questions like that because you really got to read like every single stupid word, right?
You have to do it.
Exactly. All right. The word ingenuity in paragraph 2 is closest in meaning to. All right. So what I want you to do is to read what's surrounding around it, and so that way you can get some context clues.
Okay.
You can read in your head. So cleverness. Let's see. So Tio, religious significance as a shrine, the historical situation in and around the Valley of Mexico toward the end of the first millennium BC, the ingenuity and foresightedness of Tio's elite, and finally, so could be cleverness. Since this is a diagnostic, let's go with that. And if that's your first instinct, then let's see how you do with that. All right.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's the opposite.
What do you?
Because in my head, it's not. Maybe I know Portuguese, but it's something like that.
What does it mean in Portuguese? Do you have kind of this word?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same what I'm thinking, but
what is the word?
It's like fidelidade. It's like naive. Like you don't have to. You don't have it clear.
Okay. Well, so instead of this is good practice. I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I want you to do for this test, instead of translating things that you think in the language that you're used to, I want you to do context clues, which I can actually, I have a lesson that we can do together that will help you with exactly this, because it's a lesson that I recorded from my son's 5th grade class, and the English lessons that they teach here are really, really good on that program.
I'll take on.
You think it's ambition? I think so too.
Because
yes,
the word that you told me was sightedness. It's like looking forward, right?
So they if they're elite, right, that word should give you a big context clue that these people, they got to where they are. Could be cleverness. I could see that. But I think it's ambition, because it takes ambition to do like a lot of development, right?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Which of the following is not mentioned in paragraph 2 as a main factor in the development of Tio? I don't know how to say that one. So we're still on paragraph 2. Okay, good. Not mentioned, right? So they got that in the caps. The main factors are.
I think it's the third one.
Along the. Okay. All right, let's go with that. All right, what can be inferred from paragraph 3 about prior to 200 BC?
I think it emerged rapidly as an economical and political center.
Which of the following allowed Tio to have a competitive edge over its neighbors?
Doesn't say Guatemala and Mexico.
Okay, so this one?
And between this one and the other one. But I think it's the last
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the next one I want you to read to yourself um, and then try to come up with the answer.
one.
So you understand what this one's asking you?
I have to fill in this person.
Yeah, select the box to add the sentence. Yeah, where would this best fit in between?
I think it was the first one.
Where?
Mm-hmm. This is about the whole text or only the thing?
So it says an introductory sentence for a brief summary of the passage is provided below. A complete summary by selecting the three answer choices. Okay, complete the summary by selecting the three answer choices that express the most important details. So that's a highlight there. Like I always keep the directions in mind when I'm doing reading because that's going to be an important part. Most important ideas in the passage. So there's three things they want you to make a summary of by. Number one, most important ideas. Number two, some sentences do not belong in the summary because they express ideas that are not presented in the passage or are minor ideas in the passage. This question is worth 2 points. So Tyre was a highly developed city in Mesoamerica that reached its peak between about AD 150 and 700. So go down a little bit. Okay, so it's just saying that. Okay, so let's read the summary that they have. Complete the summary by selecting, three. Okay, so we have to pick three of these passages, of these sentences. So it wants you, that's this sentence right here. Tio was a highly developed city in Mesoamerica that reached its peak between AD 150 and 170. That's the introductory sentence of a summary. Like say, for example, this is asking us about the whole, the entire article, right? But they're going to make a separate summary. It's just going to be like a brief summary, like a paragraph, right? So they gave you the first sentence of that summary, which is this, right? So then you're going to build an entire summary based on what you think is the most important ideas using three of these choices down here. So if it has something that like is not presented, so this is a test of how this question is going to be the hardest one because it's going to be a test of how well did you understand this this stuff, because you have to know what was not said based on what the words are, right? Like if it says may have developed, you have to go back and see did they develop, or is it for sure, or is it maybe, or is that accurate, and is it important to put into this detail? And so you're going to pick three of these choices, and then we'll go over that after. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at these questions first, and then you can read it, and you can read it to yourself. And then I would say, as you go, read the question, like if you see that first one, because I don't like to read all of them and then do it. Like I kind of get this one in my head, I'm like, oh, I see that. Okay. And then answer that one and then go back to reading and then, or look at the next question. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
want to go over the practice that we did last time. So please don't get us discouraged. I know this was hard, and good thing it's diagnostic, so it's a good thing we're doing this, because definitely, you need practice, because I struggled when I was reading yours, what your answers were. I understood why you made the choices that you did on the test. So you did very well, considering, even though, if you can see the scores right here.
Yes.
Okay. So you did very well, considering, even though it looks like, discouraging, the score. Don't get discouraged, because this is why I'm here, right? So we're just going to focus strictly, mainly on reading for like the first, until we're good at it. Like, that's, I think, the biggest issue is the reading for you and for me. So the reading is tough. So if we focus on the reading, everything else will come into line. Look how well I think you did on the speaking is pretty decent. So we're going to focus mainly on the reading, because that's a big part of it. So let's take a look at the the test. We're just going to go over it like question by question. So, all right. So one thing that I'm going to give you some documentation on all of this that we're talking about, but if you want to take notes, you can, because there's going to be some tricks that I'm going to teach you along the way, and we'll kind of go over them a lot. But one of the things that I do with my son, because we do a lot of reading in his virtual school, is there's a lot of tricks that can just bypass reading the whole thing because the way that they design these articles, they can either be kind of interesting, not interesting at all, or interesting, but never like above average interesting. I'm telling you, like these two articles that you did were complicated. Like, they were not typical of something you would read in school, like when you're in college. This is not stuff that unless you're a science major, like just studying, or history major, like the dinosaur one, you have to be a science major to know. I didn't understand some of that language. I understood what it was kind of saying, but it was technical. So what I want you to focus on doing, and we're going to practice this a lot. Instead of trying to understand what the article, like each of these words mean, I'm going to give you tips on just to get the idea of what the test is trying to ask you instead. So it's a trick. It's manipulation, essentially. Like, this is like what they're trying to do, is trying to manipulate you. You're gonna beat that. Instead of trying to read this stuff and understand, it's not gonna work. So this first question says, in paragraph 1, each of the following is mentioned. So what I do when I don't read the whole thing. I don't read the whole thing. Starting off, I always start with the questions. The directions will tell you, like, for example, in one of the reading practice sets, it'll tell you the directions, which will be like similar to what they'll have on the actual test, which is read the passage. Give yourself 20 minutes to complete this practice set. Don't read it then. Don't read it. Like, that's my suggestion, is don't read it, because that's going to confuse you more. Like, don't think you need to get the whole concept of it, because you really just need to get whatever they're focusing on, which is just paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and that'll tell you which one. So going back to this first one, says paragraph 1 right there. So you'll know you're just only going to focus on this, and it's the first paragraph. So, like, don't even think about concepts. So it says paragraph 1, each of the following is mentioned, right? So then you want to kind of highlight that in your mind when you're reading the question. Mentioned, mentioned, mentioned. That means, you know, which one specifically is it going to be saying, right? Like, you now know, like, what the question's asking is, what does it say specifically? Not the meaning of it, not whatever. What does it mention, right? And then you want to also highlight, okay, feature. Feature. All right, we're going to think about feature. This means, like, you know what feature means?
Related.
Like, so vocabulary will probably mean a lot too. Like, but if you don't know the meaning of this, of a word that's in the question, look at it see if that specific word is in the paragraph. So if you don't know what it means, feature, right? So we can stop there and not read the rest of the question, because you got to understand the question before you answer, right? So mentioned and then feature. So we know it's got to be something mentioning feature. So let's look and see. All right, I skim. I don't read. I'll look and I'll no. Okay, I don't see. Do you see the word feature?
No.
No, I didn't see it either. Okay, so if it didn't have the word, then keep going in the question. Mentioned as a feature of the city of Tio, let's call it Tio, because I don't know how to say it. Tio, between AD 150, all right, so they're giving us exact time frames. So that's another thing. So if you see numbers, perfect. That always helps me with my mind, because I'm like, oh, okay, they're giving me numbers. I can spot that very easily. So 150 and 700. So we got 200 and 100. That's not right, right? So we don't need to know that. We don't know it. But we can read it. It says began its growth, right? So we're talking about a city and growth. So we want to know, I guess it's talking about, you know, how the city expanded and got bigger and grew, right? So it began its growth, but that's not what the question's asking, right? So we don't need to know anything about that. But here we go. I can spot it right there, 150 to 700. At its height meaning the best, the biggest growth, right? Where it grew to the highest point, right? So now we know that it's mentioning something about the city being in a very high point. It probably had a population of more than 125,000 people and covered 20 square kilometers. So now we're thinking that maybe feature. Well, let's keep reading a little bit and see. Okay. So it had over 2,000 apartment complexes, a great market, a large number of industrial workshops, an administrative center, and a number of massive religious edifices, and a regular grid pattern of streets and patterns. Okay, so what do you think that highlighted part of what I just read is talking about?
The development of apartment complexes.
Or like overall. So yeah, that's one of the features, that's the definition now. So feature means something that's prominent or important parts of any bigger thing. So for example, like when you go to like a concert, right? You can have like, usually you'll have maybe a band that plays before the band that you bought the tickets for. Like, say you wanted to go see the Rolling Stones, right? They're going to have some other obscure band that you've never heard of before, right? They're the band that plays before. But the Rolling Stones, they're the feature because you go there for them, right? The city has features that will attract you to them. Orlando, what are some features of Orlando? Disney. There you go. Right there is like the biggest theme parks, really, in general. Like, people come here. It's a feature part of our city, right? So this question's asking what's mentioned as a feature of the city. So now that we can get exactly, that's exactly what that means. So it's not that's exactly what that means. So I'm gonna do some studies with you about context clues, because this is an important part of taking tests, is because I don't always know what the word means, but you can figure it out just by looking at the context. So now we know from that context what feature means. So, all right, so now we want to figure out, now that we know what feature means, we want to figure out what is mentioned. All right, so we're going to go through them each one and eliminate, because it says regular grid pattern. Several administrative, we know that's the correct answer. So let's see, many manufacturing workshops. Yes, because we got a large number of industrial workshops. And then apartment complexes. Yep, we got that. So yep, you were correct. You got several administrative centers. Didn't mention it, right? So now we know it's not that. So vocabulary is my favorite. I wish the whole thing could be on vocabulary, because if we can figure out a meaning of anything, right? So the word ingenuity in paragraph 2 is closest in meaning. We're going to use that same practice I was just talking about with context. So what I do is I look for the word, and I think it was highlighted on the test too, right? I think so. So that makes it easier. So what I do is I look for maybe like the sentence before, and I read all the way to the end. The exact role of other factors is much more difficult to pinpoint. For instance, TO, religious significance as a shrine, the historical situation in and around the Valley of Mexico toward the end of the first millennium BC, the ingenuity and foresightedness of the TO's elite, and finally, the impact of natural disasters, such as the volcanic eruptions of the late first millennium. Okay, so that's a lot of words, right? Especially if you didn't read this right off the bat, because I would still, especially with vocabulary, I don't need to read the content because I'm just looking for the meaning of that specific, only one word. I don't care about the rest of those paragraphs. So if we're talking about this sentence, the exact role of other factors is much more difficult to pinpoint. We kind of understand from up here that this is a very like big city that has a lot of development, right? From what we just read on that first couple of sentences. This is asking us a question, or kind of telling us that this the reason why it was a big city and why it had so much development, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's saying there's other factors, but the ingenuity and foresightedness of the elite. You know what elite means?
Yes.
What does that mean?
The top of the people of the city.
Yeah, like the powerful people, exactly. So if you know that, what would be something like an adjective that would describe them as to how they could develop something very quickly? I can understand ambition being your answer, because that's kind of unfair that they put those two with it. But we're looking at the ingenuity and foresightedness. And finally, the impact of the natural disasters. A way that you could describe cleverness, because that is going to help somebody, the elite, kind of build. Ingenuity, think of it like technology, like Elon Musk or Bill Gates. They had ingenuity. And foresightedness is, do you know this word? It's kind of a weird.
Can you imagine what it is like to see beyond?
Very good, very good. So to see beyond, right, is like technology, and Bill Gates had foresightedness, and Elon Musk had foresightedness, because they were able to see beyond exactly what you just said. And their ingenuity was to create and be clever about the timing and the placement of how this was going to grow into something big, right? So ambition wouldn't be the correct word in the sentence, but I could see where you come from with that one. It's just, you have to think about the meaning of each of the choices. Obviously, sincerity is not going to be one. That's good you didn't pick that. Or faith. It had nothing to do with religion, right? So cleverness and ambition, those were the only two options. But so those vocabulary words, we're going to focus on vocabulary a lot. All right, so which of the following is not mentioned in paragraph 2 as a main factor in the development of TO? Again, this one's just giving you exactly which one's mentioned, which one's not, and you got this right? Because you were able to pick out which one wasn't there. So, main factor. Let's see. How did this tremendous development take place, and why did this happen? Among the main factors. All right, so there we got the exact wording. I love when it has the exact wording because I need to, if I can spot that, then I know, all right, it's in this sentence. So main factor, main factor. Geographic location, do we have that? Yep, location, right? So we know it's not that one. This one is not mentioned, right? So that's another one of those. So location, we got that. Irrigation, got that. Obsidian, we got that. So you're correct. Long period of volcanic. I like those ones. Those are easier.
This one was easy.
Yeah, those are good. Whenever you can spot it, you don't have to read it and think about it. What can be inferred by paragraph I hate the inferred, because I feel like these ones trick me too. Inferred from the paragraph about, I'm going to call that Cece, because I don't know. Prior. So that's another word that we need to, so you know what the word inferred means, right? Okay. So prior to 200 BC. So when it says prior, it's going to like kind of put it in there so quickly, it's going to be hard to understand. So you really have to like put your brain in that spot of like, oh my God, okay, prior, right? So, and then we got another number. So those are easy to spot. I like the numbers again. So we have that right here, prior to 200 BC. So I would go ahead and read that first sentence. This last factor is at least circumstantially implicated in TO's rise. Prior to 200, a number of relatively small centers So it's probably going to be exactly something around here that we're going to make an inference about this place. A number of relatively small centers coexisted in and near the Valley of Mexico. Around this time, the largest of these, all right, so we actually don't even need this sentence. So I break it down, like I will break it down to what do I need to know? What do I need? And only that. And I'll read it over and over, just that one sentence or two or three times, and be like, what is it asking me? What is it asking me? What does this mean? What does this mean when it's coming to these inference questions? Because these are harder. So you have to really focus, really focus. All right, so I would ignore, so there's other places that there's small centers. So now we're going to talk about around this time, the largest. So out of all these other small cities that are around TO, is the largest one is called this, Sisi, which was seriously affected by a volcanic eruption. So that, pinpoint that in your mind. There was a bunch of cities around TO, and then they were smaller than TO, but Sisi was the largest of those small ones, right? But it had a problem. There was a volcanic eruption with much of its agricultural land covered by lava. With Sisi eliminated as a potential rival, so now it's not a threat anymore because it got hit with this big volcanic eruption, right? Any one of the number of relatively modest towns might have emerged as a leading economic and political power in central Mexico. So that's why it's confusing. These inference ones are very confusing because what is it? Huh?
You can see the word in just because it's there. It's not
Right. Yes, exactly. So you can do that with the ones that say, which one mentions or what specifically are the main factors. Those you can do that with. You can do that. But these, no, don't do that. Like they're purposely about to trick you. So you want to like question, what are they tricking me with? So it's almost going to be the opposite of what you think. So you have to like take more time on these and really think about it. So I would say, so the inference, right? So the main picture of what they're trying to communicate here is, okay, so let's go through each one. This is what I do with these. I will take my time on each one of these. So it was a fairly small city until that date. So we're talking about prior to 200 BC. Was it a small city prior to 200?
no.
No, it was the largest, right? It's the opposite. It was the largest of all the smaller cities, but it wasn't a fairly small. It was actually pretty large. It was located outside the Valley of Mexico.
Near.
It's near, yeah, and it really is not an inference because it said it. It said it specifically, right? It's not an inference at all. So good, it's not either one of those, right? It emerged rapidly as an economical and political center. So we want to look at emerge, that word emerge. Did it emerge?
Yes.
It didn't emerge at all, right? It was already established prior to 200 BC. It never mentioned anything about it emerging. In fact, it did the opposite. It got a volcanic eruption and demolished it. So it didn't emerge at all as a political power. So the only answer it could possibly be is that its economy relied heavily on agriculture because it did, just because of one small or one volcanic eruption, all of its agriculture land got covered and it was no longer. So it had to have agriculture in order to exist, right? So that's the only answer it could be, right? Those are
I got nervous with the time talking.
yeah, I know. Oh my God, me too. Especially if you're in a place with other people taking the test and you see them getting up and they're done. I'm like, oh my God. I hate it. Like it makes me insane. Like like a time stuff makes me really, really. So these will be good. That's why like it'll be good for us to go through them. Like that one was just a diagnostic. So we'll go through these so that we'll start being able to get faster with them and like we'll do them together and figure out and we'll discuss. So that way you won't be nervous about the time, at least for these lessons. I know. Like even games that I play. I'm like, nah, I don't like the ones with the time frames. It gives me too much anxiety. I want to relax. All right. So, which of the following allowed TO to have a competitive edge over its neighbors? All right. So, I like when they highlight it because then I can just look. I don't have to read this crap. I'm just gonna just look at what's highlighted. It seems that TO's natural resources, along with the city's elite's ability to recognize their potential, gave the city a competitive edge over its neighbors. So it's right there. It's all in one sentence, right? So what are the two things that it mentions as a competitive edge? You can read that sentence again to yourself.
What, the first one?
Yeah, so when it highlights like this is what it wants, it's asking you. So, and it's going to rephrase it, right, in a different way. So what does it say here, like exactly as the two things it mentions as having a competitive edge over its neighbors?
Natural resources.
Natural resources is one.
Its ability to recognize their potential.
Exactly. So, what do you think a competitive edge over its neighbors means?
Like the city is not developed with the building.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what that means. So it means like, how is it going to be better, right? Think of like a competition. Like they got the edge. And that means they're going to wedge their way to the top, because they've got this thing that's helping them be the best, right? So we got natural resources and the elite, right? So, the presence of a highly stable elite class. See, it's unfair that they put that in there because I would probably say that, but it doesn't mention both. So there's two things. So it's not just the one. So that's not the competitive edge because it's even mentioned second too. Like really, the number one thing would probably be the natural resources, but it's both combined, right? They're kind of saying when they say along with, that preposition really means that it's because of the two things together, right? Knowledge derived directly from the Olmecs didn't mention anything about that, so we can immediately eliminate it, right? Scarce natural resources in nearby areas, such as those located in what are now the Guatemalan and Mexican highlands, that they didn't mention that, right? They mentioned it later, so I could see maybe why you put that because it does mention it later, but you really only want to focus on this because it's got that dash. It's telling you exactly how they got a competitive edge, right? It was not because of anything else, but because of their abilities. They had a well exploited and readily available commodity. So this is two things, right? Well exploited, which if you don't know the definition of it during the test, you can kind of guess from the context, right? Elite. They exploit stuff, right? Do you know what this word means, well exploited?
Exploited, it's like explore?
No, like the word exploit means like to take advantage of, kind of. Like a lot of people use the word in a negative sense, like why do you exploit your children? Or they think like momagers, like the Kardashians. The mom exploits their children, her children, to make money. You know, put them on TV and exploit them to make sure they use those resources that they have to make money, right? Usually is what that means. So well exploited is a positive thing in this case because, well, in any time they put well in front of it, because well has that root of good, right? It's the adverb of good. So meaning it's a good exploitation. So that's talking about the elite, right? They exploit their abilities, right? They use their abilities to their advantage, and recognize their potential. So that's what that means in that sense. Like that's that number one. And then readily available commodity. If you don't know what commodity means, you can kind of guess. Think of like stocks and things like that. It's resources. So it's another word for resources. So they just use the synonym. So that would be the answer because it's well exploited. It's so hard because you're going to concentrate so much on one particular word or this or that. But that's the trick of these tests is to like focus on what they're tricking you on.
Yeah, it doesn't say commodities. So that's
Mm-hmm. I know you got to think of the synonyms on these type of questions. When all of the other ones you're not sure, or if you can limit it down, first you got to eliminate the ones you know it's not, right? You know it's not that. Or well, I mean it could be, but because it says that word, but that's the trick. It's only giving you one, so you know it's got to be two when you got the word along, right? But this doesn't mention anything at all about that, so you know it's not that. You can eliminate that. Scarce natural resources in other areas, possibly, but that's only focusing on the resources, and it didn't mention anything about this yet. So that's why it's going to be hard to like navigate those types of things. But it's breaking it down word for word, like every single meaning of every single word, and knowing that okay, they're looking for two things. Two things. This is the only one that has two, and these are synonyms for those two things.
in this case, I can just read the first line, the first two lines
Yep.
into the.
Yep. You don't. That's why I said I don't read the whole thing. I don't read the whole thing. I had you do that for the diagnostic because I wanted you I wanted to see where you're at, but this is the trick that I'm going to teach you. That I never read the whole thing. I break it down question from question, and sometimes I'm right, and sometimes I do get them wrong. But for the most part, I'll get them right if I just focus on okay. Because if I look at the whole picture, I'm not going to understand. I'm not going because I'll be trying to focus on what does this mean? What? How do I know? And da, da, da. If it asks you for a summary, then you have to read the whole thing. You do. Like if you have to like come up with a concept of what the main idea is, then you need to read the whole thing. But when it's asking you, oh, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, what does this mean? What is that? They're looking for English. That's all they want. They want to know if you understand this English word and that English word, and can you get the context of it? That's the trick. So with this specific test, it can be easier if it's just if it is like this, and so we'll focus on doing that. Paragraph 4. What has recent research on obsidian tools found at Almac sites shown? Good, you got this one right. Because again, this is another one of those you're good at these, just like I am too. If it's got the fact in there, and I can just read that, the fact is easy. Inference or like those kinds of things are trickier. But this is easier to spot, right? Because you'll just look for, okay, Olmec. Let me find that word. Okay, there's Olmecs. Let's read around that. The valley and many other places, which was rich in obsidian. The hard volcanic stone was a resource that had been in great demand for many years, at least since the rise of the Olmecs, a people who flourished. Now they're going to tell us in the parentheses, right? People who flourished between 1200 and 400 BC, and it apparently had a secure market. So you put some of the obsidian used by the Olmecs came from the area around Tio. So there's more to that, right? So moreover, recent research on obsidian tools found at Olmec sites has shown that some of the obsidian obtained from the Olmecs originated. There you go, right there, right? Very good. You got it.
Yeah.
I like those. Now, these piss me off. These, like, they gave me an exact amount that was going to be on there. Like, tell me 5 answers that are correct, and there's 2 that are not. But this pisses me off because then the whole answer is wrong, right? I hate that. Okay. Oh, wait. So, okay, now this one does say select 2. All right. So, select the 2 answer choices that are mentioned. There we go. We got mentioned. So you can highlight that in your mind. That's going to be in there, right? In paragraph 5, as being features, there's that word again, features, of TO that may have attracted immigrants to the city. So that may have. So it's not like truth, because we can't possibly know because we weren't there, right? But it's possibility that it could have attracted them, right? Attracted immigrants to this place. So I always break it down like 15 different ways. Like, what does it mean? What does it mean? Okay. So to receive credit, you must select 2. All right. So you got the first one right. The prosperity of the elite. All right. So let's go to mentioned as features. All right, in paragraph 5. So, long distance trade in obsidian probably, there's the word probably, is a synonym of may have, right? So it might be somewhere around in this area, right? Because it's got that. Probably gave the elite residents of Teal access to a wide variety of exotic goods as well as relatively prosperous life. Okay, such success may have, it's got the exact words, may have attracted immigrants to TO. So, there's your first answer right there. So that success, trade in obsidian, probably gave elite residents access. There, yeah, that's that answer, right? Prosperity of the elite. So now we got in addition, right? In addition is a key word here that we're going to know as a second thing, right? So now we got the first one. The second one, TO's elite may have consciously attempted to attract new inhabitants. It's probable that as early as 200, TO may have achieved some religious significance, and its shrine or shrines may have served as an additional population magnet. So, there we go with the second answer, the shrines, right? Make sense?
Makes.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
this was more easy.
Yeah, I like these when they're right there. It said in addition to, so you gave us the first one in the first sentence, and then the second one later on by saying in addition. So you know it's got to be the other. There's 2 right there. I love that.
When I see in addition, it means that it's going to be more important.
Well, when it says when it's these questions, 2, I love when they give you how many exactly they want you to answer. So then you know, all right, there's 1, you got that, right? All right, it's pretty clear in that first sentence. So then you're looking for any kind of clue like in addition or also or another factor that or whatever the question's asking. So if it says being a feature that may have attracted, if it said another feature that also attracted, or in addition to, or as well as, anything that has that kind of language, that will be the second thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in paragraph 6, the author discusses the thriving obsidian operation. So it's highlighting this. In order to, I hate these two. These ones are freaking hard. Okay. So, but I like that they highlight the exact what they're trying to say here. So, but you got it. You got this answer correct. So the thriving obsidian operation in order to, why this, so the question is why. So we want to know why. He discusses it. All right. This is like an opinion thing, but we'll figure out from the context, right? So the picture of TO that emerges is a classic picture of positive feedback among obsidian mining and working, trade, population, growth, irrigation, and religious tourism. The thriving obsidian operation, for example, would necessitate more miners, additional manufacturers of obsidian tools, and additional traders to carry the good news to new market or goods to new markets. So, why does he discuss this? To illustrate how several factors influence each other to make TO a powerful and wealthy city. So, what was the reason do you feel like you chose that one?
Because his words of hope, and then he points all the examples for, like this phrase, this highlighted phrase is an example why they are an emergency.
Very good. Yeah, because and then they give you several factors, right? After that, there are several factors. There's miners, additional manufacturers, tools. That's several factors, right? That influenced each other to make TO a powerful and wealthy city. So overall, this last paragraph here is kind of summarizing why it's successful, right? So that would be the most logical answer, other than explain why manufacturing was the main industry. No, it didn't say just manufacturing, right? It was talking about miners, tools, traders. You can eliminate that, right? And give an example of an industry that took very little time to develop. No, it didn't talk about time, right? It was talking about all the factors, like you meant, like you thought about, right? To explain how a successful industry can be a source of wealth and a source of conflict at the same time. Not really. I mean, I wouldn't say. Yeah, I don't even think that has anything to do with it, right? So that's the most logical choice. Good job on that. All right. So in paragraph 1 of the passage, there is. These are hard too. These ones are hard because it has everything to do with right. I didn't write this, so I don't know. There's a missing sentence. Where would the following sentence best fit? So, in fact, that's going to be your clue. This is going to be the trick, is the in fact. Like whatever the transition word. They call this a transition word. Like when I teach my kids how to write essays, the teachers give them instructions on how to start each paragraph. And they say for every paragraph that you start, you're going to need a transition word, first of all, or secondly, da 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 da. So they're going to do that you can put it in the middle of the sentence too, or paragraph, but this will give you a clue as to where they want you to put it. So it will be relating to the sentence prior to it. When you've got like some kind of little transition here, that means it wants you to think about what was just said in the sentence right before it. That will help you decide where it goes. So in fact, articles or artifacts, so you're going to want to know this artifacts and pottery from TO have been discovered in sites as far away as the Mayan lowlands, the Guatemalan highlands, northern Mexico, and the Gulf of Mexico. So where would we want to have something that's a sentence that has to do with location, right? Location and artifacts or something to do with that, right? So they had a couple of different choices, right? So here we have at its height between about AD 150 and 700, it probably had a population of more than 125,000 people, and it covered at least 20 square kilometers. So did that have anything to do with artifacts or how far away or distance or anything? No, not really, right? Let's see. It had over 2,000 apartment complexes, a great market, a large number of industrial workshops. Because, well, here's another thing to do. Like, if you read the sentence and then go, maybe, then I would read it with it, right? Like, I would read it after it. I'd be like, okay, at its height it probably had between more than 125,000, covered at least 20 square miles. In fact, artifacts in pottery, what? What do you mean, in fact, of? Because we didn't mention anything about artifacts, right? So then the next one, it had over 2,000 apartment complexes, a great market, a large number of industrial workshops, and an administrative center, regular grid patterns. In fact, no, because it didn't talk about a fact there, right? Or anything to do with this yet. Clearly, much planning and central control were involved in expansion and ordering of this great metropolis. It didn't talk about anything, right? Moreover, the city had economic and perhaps religious contacts with most parts of Mesoamerica. There we go. There's a location. Most parts, right? It's talking about other locations in the area. And then it also talked about something to do with religious stuff, right? So, in fact, artifacts and pottery from TO have been discovered in sites as right? So that makes sense. So that's the trick on those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, TO was a highly developed city in Mesoamerica that reached its peak between. Yeah, so this is the one I was talking about. Like I'm like, there's too many things going on. It reached its peak between AD 150 and 700. All right, so we got a number there, so that helps a little bit. Like when we have dates, numbers, we know it's just between 150 and 700, right? So I don't know what it's asking here. TO was a highly developed city in Mesoamerica that reached its peak between AD 150 and 700. I think it's just asking you for details on that. It doesn't tell you paragraph 1. It doesn't tell you if it's the whole thing or not. But I don't know if this was given to you in the on the actual test or not, like this little highlight here, but everything's going to be in this one paragraph. So you got that right. So we're going to find 150 and 700 in the text. So began its growth, da da da. At its height between AD 150 and 700. So this kind of goes back to that first question, right, where we talked about features of the city that made it grow. So the number of sophistication of the architectural, administrative, commercial, and religious features of TO indicated the existence, da da da. Correct, right? Because you knew based on like all of this, that summarizes all that, right? TO may have developed its own specific local religion. Did it as a result of the cultural advances made possible by the city's great prosperity? It didn't really mention much of that. It was just talking about how it had some massive religious like facilities and stuff, right? So it wasn't really talking about a specific its own religion. No, it didn't say that. So good, you didn't pick that. Several factors may account for TO's extraordinary development, including its location, rich natural resources, da 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 da. Correct, good. Because that's the whole basis of what that was talking about. As a result of its large number of religious shrines, by the 1st century AD, TO became the most influential religious center. Didn't talk about that, right? So very good. In many important areas, from the obsidian industry to religious tourism, TO's success and prosperity typified the classic positive feedback cycle. Good. Yep, that's another way of saying they did a lot of cool stuff. Although many immigrants settled in TO between 150 and 700, the increasing threat of coerced labor discouraged further settlement and limited TO's population growth. Even if this is true, which we didn't read the whole thing enough to like, I mean, you did, but I didn't, but like we didn't need to because we're just talking about specifically this time period, which is talking about, I mean, well, I guess the whole thing is talking about 150 to 700, but it's really just talking about this. So the immigrants and all that stuff, we wouldn't need to mention it in this particular question. But very good on getting all these other ones. It means that you understood what the whole basis of the, and that you didn't pick these two. So that's very good. Make sense? I know it's complicated, but it's like one of those things that there's a trick to it that we'll just keep practicing that, on each of these. So overall, I have a lot of confidence in you. I believe that you are going to do perfectly fine once we get done with these lessons. I'll get you to a good spot. Whoops. There we go. Get you to a good spot where, you feel comfortable and confident. We're going to practice, and it's going to hurt your brain, but I'm hoping you'll only have to do it one time, and that's it.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yes. So next week, I will have some things for you that we'll go over next week we'll go over the dinosaur one, the second one. So that we'll kind of do the same thing, and then the week after that, or maybe what I'll do is I will set up for you to do the third one that I have available over the week at some point in time, if you have a chance to, and then we'll discuss that one. Okay? You're welcome. All right. Well, have a great week, and I'll see you on Monday. I'm so excited. Have a great. Bye.